Welcome back to the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast. I'm Tim Kotzman. I'm here with John Riggins, CEO at Moon Inc. John, thanks for joining us in the studio today.
Wonderful to be here, Tim. Nice to be in New York.
Can you, real quick, walk us through 1723 HK? What does that denote?
Of course, 1723.HK. It's just kind of the stock code, how HKEX, the exchange in Hong Kong, tracks. It's not like a four letter term. It's numbers. And so 1723 is our stock code.
Got it. So instead of letters, it's numbers.
There you go.
Cool. Can you tell us about your background? I mean, your journey to Bitcoin, your professional background.
Of course. So I've been in Bitcoin for about 10 years now. When I was in college at the University of Alabama, got to be friends with a guy named David Bailey, who now runs Nakamoto. But back then he was, we were seniors in college, kind of figuring out what to do with our lives. We really went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole hard. He was, one of the smartest guys I knew in college. He was actually planning on going to work in Singapore at some hedge funds, but decided to go all in on Bitcoin with a media business back then called Why Bitcoin. And I went off and did some other things for a couple of years, worked at FedEx, spent a little bit of time in Asia doing some onboarding FedEx to kind of payments in Asia, like WeChat Pay, Alipay. And we actually looked at Bitcoin when FedEx acquired a company called Bongo International, that its biggest customer was Overstock.com, one of the first public companies to really kind of think about Bitcoin way back then. So I kind of started going back down the rabbit hole again at that point, got back in touch with David. He was raising some money to expand BTC Media at that point into China. So we got together and I joined BTC Media, moved to Shanghai, and opened up kind of a localized version of BTC Media in China at that point, where back then most of the biggest Bitcoin businesses were Chinese. The biggest exchanges, all the liquidity was there. The biggest miners were there. Still kind of the case. The biggest mining manufacturers are all Chinese, and so really got my start in Bitcoin in Shanghai back in 2016, and then I've been with David and the crew there, Tyler Evans at BTC Media, BTC Inc. now. Kind of since then, we started a fund called UTXO Management in 2019, and kind of long only Bitcoin fund with different strategies. Got into the Bitcoin Treasury play with MicroStrategy originally, and then worked with Jason Fang at Sora Ventures to kind of change the strategy of MetaPlanet just last year. And when that kind of started to go well, we looked at other public markets to enter. And the one that I was most excited about was the greater China market. And so we kind of settled on Hong Kong being the way to access that market and acquired 1723.HK earlier this year. And I joined as CEO and moved to Hong Kong. So that's kind of how I got here and have met you in the last few months through that crew.
How did the connection with Jason Fang work? I mean, it's kind of a small network even still, but.
Yeah. Jason, so when we raised a seed round in 2016 at BTC Inc., Jason was actually the analyst at the fund that led the round called Fenbushi Capital. And so we've known Jason for a decade now too. Really got to be close with Jason living in Shanghai. That's where he was. We were helping them with a lot of deal flow for Fenbushi into kind of companies in the West. And worked closely with Jason. And then when he launched his own fund, Sora Ventures, it actually became an investor in BTC Inc. Soon thereafter. So we've worked with Jason for a long time. It's been a trusted partner. And so when he gave us a call about the MetaPlanet plan last year, we took notice and hopped in on that ride. And I think participated pretty well in making MetaPlanet's launch successful. From then on, have kind of looked at Simon as the leader for Bitcoin treasuries outside of the U.S. And so that's kind of what we're looking to model ourselves after in a way, is Simon's leadership with MetaPlanet.
So you spend most of your time outside the U.S. What is your view, kind of looking both from afar, but also like being inside and behind the curtain? What's your take on how the last 5 years or even just the past year has really developed both domestically and globally before we get into Moon specifically.
Sure. Yeah, so at UTXO, we kind of developed a thesis that a MicroStrategy could work in every major public market. One of the reasons that we jumped on board with Jason and Simon for MetaPlanet last year, and kind of some of the nuances that we discovered about the Japanese market from some tax advantage perspectives, ability to allocate to Bitcoin, we think kind of gave us an understanding that the nuances of these different public markets were something that we could kind of navigate if we found the right local partners to launch in these different markets. And so it's been really fun to kind of learn about the best way to operate in public markets in different places around the world over the last year. UTXO and Sora have both invested in a number of markets, Sora mostly in Asia, UTXO kind of all over the world, Europe and Asia, mostly with Sora. So it's been, I think a really dynamic time for launching these Bitcoin Treasury strategies. But we're really still in the early innings here of, who are going to be the winners in these public markets? What are kind of the things that you need to be differentiated about in your strategy compared to the US? And so that's one thing that we're very focused on in Hong Kong is tailoring the strategy so that we can be successful long-term, building a Bitcoin treasury and maintaining a successful business, based on what's required in Hong Kong. So I think the nuances of these different markets are kind of the main thing to consider when you, think about the US versus the rest of the world. The US is pretty cut and dry when it comes to issuing equity, raising capital. It's kind of the Wild West still in the US, frankly, more so than other markets in Asia we found. So, just the way that these public markets are regulated by either agencies or exchanges in these local markets is one of the main things that we kind of see as a differentiator.
Can you say more about that? If I heard it correctly, you said the U.S. is more of the Wild West than some of these other jurisdictions. Can we dive into what that?
Yeah, I would say, U.S. is the most trusted, liquid market in the world, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit easier to raise capital, to acquire a company, do an RTO, which we've seen, number of companies do in launching a Bitcoin strategy this year, including Nakamoto. And so it's just a little bit more free in what you do. It's different in most markets in Asia where the exchanges have a little bit more control over what public companies do, how they change hands, and these sorts of things. So the U.S., still, I would kind of say it's the Wild West compared to most of the rest of the world when it comes to raising funds and running a Bitcoin treasury pure play.
Got it. Do you think the strategies that are most effective are just going to become more refined and obvious over time? Or what's your take on it? The example might be Strategy has come out with 4 preferred products this year. Mm-hmm. And as of this morning, we're recording on Monday, Strive has come out and said that publicly that they are going to launch a preferred product, and they're only going to focus on that one preferred product for at least 12 months. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that kind of a sign of the times of just kind of refining and iterating into what's going to be a better playbook, or any thoughts there?
No, that is the news this morning, right? It was a pretty big deal when it came out this morning. I think one thing that MicroStrategy and Saylor, kind of stress is that, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. At least if you're operating in the US, they have kind of blazed the trail and developed a model that works in their minds. And I think, it accurately works in the US. And so, Strategy's done most of the heavy lifting. And if you're operating a treasury company in the US, that's kind of the model to follow. I do think there's some nuance in how you do it in other markets. I think that these preferreds for Strategy, they've talked about launching in other markets. I think that it's maybe something that we'll see this year or next year. And so the preferred side, it'll be interesting to see who kind of moves first outside the U.S. in that model. What did you think about the announcement this morning? Obviously, you're following all this. Have you chatted with any of the team at Strive yet?
Not too much. I think they're limited on what they can say until after the launch, but obviously they're excited.
Yeah. It looks good. What do you think about preferreds in general? Do you think it's still to be tested? Strategy's kind of performed in a certain way since they've launched. It's been, I guess, accretive in acquiring Bitcoin. I'm still coming around to how I view it long term. But what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in year zero of the preferreds.
Yeah.
I mean, just there's so much of a potential market there, and to see how quickly through education and marketing that market develops is kind of going to be, I think, what everybody's kind of watching right now.
Yeah, pretty great product it looks like.
Yeah. Are there like a top 2 or 3 or so like regulatory arbitrage type of opportunities as you look at these different global markets? And like, can you talk about those a little bit, whether it's some sort of tax advantage or something else, just to give everyone an idea of, or is it just like, no, there's 100 of them and we don't have time to go over all those?
Yeah, I guess the tax thing would be the most obvious. And that was kind of the first major unlock for strategy, especially in the mind of investors coming in from the West, which was part of our kind of role in MetaPlanet launching, was to kind of bring in the Western attention and investor set. And, that's kind of a light bulb switch that, this tax situation in Japan, it makes sense to have a MetaPlanet launch there first. And so that was kind of an obvious one. That exists in some other places. I think there's some interesting things tax-wise about how these things will be treated in Thailand that are kind of an arbitrage in certain ways. Moon Inc. Has invested in kind of launching a couple of these other markets. The first major treasury company in Thailand and Korea. And so we've kind of gotten into the weeds about the nuances of those two markets and are looking at other places in Asia. That's kind of our focus, is expanding the opportunity set in Asia. And kind of that tax piece is an obvious one for Thailand now. I think Korea has some other interesting pieces to it. We have this Kimchi premium, even as BitPlanet's been buying Bitcoin, you can kind of see that exists there still. So I think that gives an opportunity for service providers to service these treasury companies in different ways. That's something Moon's looking to do. So yeah, I think that these nuances in different markets are pretty key to the start, and then we'll kind of develop. I think regulatory wise, I think that there will be some education and some discussion with regulators in each market about the best way to kind of support this model moving forward. I think every exchange, every public market wants more liquidity, wants a more dynamic exchange, and these companies, if they can do what MetaPlanet has done, will obviously bring a lot of that to the table. And so those are some conversations we're starting to have. So bullish on kind of each of these markets looking more favorably on the treasury play, and kind of following the US's lead, maybe in becoming a little more Wild West in some ways, while maintaining kind of the trust of the exchange and how they've regulated things so far.
What is the Kimchi premium?
Yeah, the Kimchi premium, it goes way back with kind of the way that companies are allowed to buy Bitcoin in Korea. Currently, they have to source via OTC. And so the amount of Bitcoin that you can buy with Korean won is still kind of limited. And so there's typically a premium that you have to pay to buy BTC. And so that's existed in kind of different percentage increments over the years. I think famously 20, I guess a couple of times in the last cycles, it's been pretty large, but it still exists today, which is kind of wild with how, global and liquid the Bitcoin market is, that still exists.
So that would be a challenge for a company that's in Korea, but everyone else in Korea has the same challenge? Or I'd
say if you can navigate it maybe can create a moat for yourself. And so if you have, one thing that we're looking to do with kind of the network that we've developed in Asia of these public companies doing a long-term Bitcoin Treasury strategy is to help each other through kind of local market sort of barriers and kind of play a bit of that arbitrage to the benefit of the whole group. And so that's kind of what I mean by maybe there's an opportunity to be a service provider for something to kind of unlock something that other public companies doing the strategy may not have a network to do.
Got it. So that, correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of a ode to Moon Inc. investing in some of these other
That's one of the reasons
companies.
that we have. Yeah.
So that both like that's the part of the strategy and part of operationally how you can create those advantages with different regulatory and other
Correct.
other items. Got it. Can you walk us through Moon Inc. from like, here's an idea to where it is today?
Sure. Yeah. So the idea basically came from the success of MetaPlanet over its first 6 months. And so we were looking at the next major market to enter. I'd spent some time in China, have a pretty good network, I think, of interested investors and potential partners in that part of the world. And so we started looking at the best way to kind of enter that greater China market, and Hong Kong was kind of the obvious place. One of the largest public markets in the world, trusted exchange framework, trusted kind of regulatory environment that was kind of becoming more pro Web3 since Trump's election. We could see, and so having spent time in China and kind of seeing how maybe access to Bitcoin from certain types of investors who maybe would like that access was lacking, maybe more so than in other parts of the world, and maybe being kind of the biggest untapped demand for Bitcoin exposure in the world, we felt like kind of the greater China market through Hong Kong was the place to do it. So we started looking at the best way to enter. We started talking to different companies in Hong Kong about maybe we're going to do something similar to MetaPlanet, where we'd take a minority stake in something, help it develop a more pro Bitcoin strategy moving forward. We began working with a local family office, local partner in Hong Kong. That's been great. And kind of decided that the best way to go would be to find kind of a company and management team that we were confident in a business sector that we liked, and take a majority stake in that business. And so the three of us came together as partners to jointly acquire 1723. It is in a products category on the Hong Kong exchange, which is relevant to kind of the strategy that we developed moving forward, prepaid consumer products. So one thing that's interesting about the Hong Kong market is that when one of these public companies changes hands, is that you need to stay in the same category. Hong Kong had a rash of RTOs almost a decade ago that didn't always go well for minority shareholders. And so the exchange has taken a very strong approach to making sure that minority shareholders are protected in the event of kind of a company changing ownership hands. And so we really liked the team at 1723. We really liked the business category and the existing business. Prepaid consumer products, mostly in the telecom sector, but 30-year-old operating business, SIM cards, telecom, traditional kind of stable revenue base, and that potential to grow that core business by implementing a kind of pro-Bitcoin forward-looking business model. And so the first thing that we did upon taking over 1723 is see how we could invest in that existing business and keep the telecom business growing while adding a Bitcoin business line. And so the first thing that we looked at doing was a prepaid Bitcoin card that's now launched. We actually launched it at Bitcoin Asia back in April in Hong Kong. We need to get you out to Hong Kong next year, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but a great event. What I've heard is that it's the most international travelers for a business conference that's happened in Hong Kong in the last decade.
Oh, wow.
All around Bitcoin. So we had Eric Trump come. We had leaders from all over kind of the Bitcoin scene in Asia there. So it's kind of the perfect launch pad for our first Bitcoin product. And from that, we'll see where we can develop kind of Bitcoin products moving forward, partly to service some of our investments in other parts of Asia, like in Thailand, like in in Korea. That's kind of the first jump is that prepaid Bitcoin card, which we've already seen a lot of demand for in the region and have made some of our first sales since that conference.
And it sounds like that product, I mean, it could be a physical gift card, but it could also be just purely digital. Does that sound right?
Yeah. So the first iteration of the product is physical, but the gift card space is obviously something that's works all over the world in digital and physical format, and so we're going to have the right strategy to grow that business line in a way that's good for the core business, which is that prepaid product sector.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar, but from what I've heard, gift cards, first of all, if it can be a version of it digital, obviously there's a lot of advantages there, but also just, I don't know, it's arguably maybe one of the best businesses in the world because of just the realities of people holding off on redeeming their gift card or
there's a lot of
forgetting about their Bitcoin, forgetting about their Bitcoin gift card. I mean, just all of these kind of realities of the world. Can you speak to that at all, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, we're still kind of developing where the product goes, but I think that's definitely true. I mean, the Starbucks bank has become pretty big. Yeah. Off of their gift card product first, and now the app and the points and all these things. So there are a lot of things that can be done with that model.
Awesome. Bitcoin custody is evolving, and OnRamp leads this change with multi-institution custody, eliminating single points of failure. Instead of one institution or complex private keys, OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated, cold storage, multi-sig vault backed by 3 independent, institutional-grade custodians. No single custodian can move funds by themselves, providing an unprecedented level of security that traditional custody solutions simply can't match. Protected by a $100 million Lloyd's of London insurance policy, all transactions are fully auditable on-chain, never rehypothecated, and executed only at your explicit direction. This means complete transparency and control over your assets at all times. Beyond custody, OnRamp delivers comprehensive Bitcoin financial services, including lending, trading, inheritance planning, IRAs, and more. OnRamp functions as your private banking partner, coordinating key holder activity, removing technical burdens, and providing a personalized, trust-minimized experience tailored to your specific wealth preservation goals. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or an experienced holder, OnRamp's approach helps secure generational wealth with unmatched security and peace of mind. Visit onrampbitcoin.com today to learn more, sign up, or book a free consultation with their team of Bitcoin custody experts. Hey guys, today's episode is brought to you by StampSeed. If you're in cold storage, you know how important it is to protect your seed phrase. That's why I recommend you head over to stampseed.com and check it out for yourself. This seed phrase storage device is one solid piece of titanium. There are no loose pieces, and you can hammer your seed phrase in letter by letter. When you go to stampseed.com, use promo code TIM15 for a 15% discount across the website. That's TIM15. Join us at The Win in Las Vegas, February 23rd through the 26th, 2026 for Bitcoin for Corporations. Use code KOTZ when you grab your tickets at strategy.com, and we'll see you there. You're here in New York. For a certain reason?
That's right. Yeah, we're here. We were talking to Simon about kind of the best steps to take upon launching this strategy. And one thing that he was very positive on was OTC markets listing here. So that's one thing that we're in New York for, is to ring the bell on our OTC QX uplist, so that U.S. investors and USD will have better access to 1723. So we're excited about that. We're excited to meet with investors in Hong Kong this week about that and other things. And we've heard a lot of clamoring on Twitter and other places about making it easier for U.S. investors to to buy Moon, and so that's what we're here to accomplish. We're really excited to get more give investors in the U.S. better access to Moon.
Awesome. In the U.S., and I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say it's half retail, half institutional. What's the landscape over in Hong Kong or any other markets that you're familiar with? Is it half retail, quote unquote, or is there a lot of retail, or is it institutional, or is it like neither? It's something else that I'm just not familiar with.
One of the things that we thought a lot about at Moon in the first few months here is kind of reaching both segments of investors, and so there's around the different events that come to Hong Kong, and what we've been doing kind of in the background is developing relationships with the main retail platforms, especially kind of an Asia retail investor, along with kind of the institutional investor platforms that most kind of China capital, Asia capital goes through to think about public equities on different markets like HKEX. And so we've developed a really strong relationship with Futu, which is based out of Hong Kong and is kind of the Robinhood of Asia, but I think has a chance to really grow bigger than Robinhood based on kind of the size of the market, and is really doing a great job of giving users, a lot of retail investors, options for exposure to Bitcoin and kind of a future that treasury companies are operating in different markets around the world. Futu is a great platform there. So we've done a number of events with Futu. Really like the team there. One thing that we've talked about is, I think MicroStrategy is one of the top traded stocks on Futu for that market. And so, these users in different countries are interested in something like that in their own market. And so kind of reaching that audience, and then the kind of institutional set of investors that are interested in HKEX listed equities. It's kind of an interesting market in how you reach them, and so that's something that we've been doing a lot of also. But both definitely important, both major markets. I think there are more retail investors in China than there are citizens in Hong Kong with a brokerage account of some kind, and then the institutional capital that doesn't quite have the perfect exposure to Bitcoin yet is, again, I think the biggest untapped demand that exists, biggest untapped liquidity that'll exist coming into Bitcoin moving forward. So that's kind of our main focus is how do we build a business that is able to give that exposure to an institutional investor in that market. And, that's kind of the main thing we're thinking about.
Got it. Is there a difference in the conversations with retail and institutional investors in Hong Kong versus the US, or one set, or do like globally, are some people higher up the education curve or the conviction curve? Like, is it a totally different conversation, or people are more the same than different kind of?
Yeah, I think people are generally the same. I mean, there's a person who's interested in Bitcoin. I think, over the long term is going to want some bit of that to be exposure to treasury companies. Is going to want some portion of that to be exposure to companies building Bitcoin products. And so I think that exists in both markets. I think that really the main unlock for a company like Moon is developing the right strategy to be the winner in Hong Kong on that exchange. And so that's kind of the important thing for us is developing the right business moving forward so that we are in the right position as this becomes, kind of the dominant thing that everyone in the world wants exposure to. And so, reaching those investors through the right platforms, I think, is one thing that's important about, how you set up a strategy, especially if you're in one of these Asian markets. And I think that's something that we have kind of done a good job of on the front end, but it's something that we need to focus on.
I feel like there's a couple different areas that a Bitcoin treasury company could get into, whether it's just putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet or leveraged long or amplified Bitcoin. Choose your adjective. But then there's the operating side of the business that you touched on a little bit. I don't know if there's anything else maybe there that is something that you've considered, and then there's the like counterparty risk, Bitcoin yield sort of conversation where Saylor has said, until JP Morgan, and maybe those are not his words or my words, but in my mind, if it's JP Morgan that's your counterparty, maybe that's a lot different from what the options are now, let alone what they've been in the past. How do you kind of think through all of that, or is it too early to even kind of go down that path or thought process?
Yeah, we watching closely what strategy does there. I think it's interesting, some of the things we've seen JP Morgan say in the last couple of weeks about what they'll be offering. But Metaplanet has, I think, been a good model for how you can be smart about acquiring Bitcoin, maybe getting a little bit of leverage on Bitcoin and what they're doing with options and things that they've talked about pretty publicly. But so those are things that we're looking at Moon, within the framework that we operate in Hong Kong. I think those are all interesting. I think that the kind of yield stuff that's talked about hasn't really been adopted by mainstream treasury companies yet, because the product, to I guess Saylor's point, via your point, is that you really need strong counterparties if you're gonna be working towards that. So I think that some of those exist in Asia. One thing that's interesting about the Asia market is that you have a lot of like OG Bitcoin groups based around early mining groups, and so those groups have had kind of a long history of offering different financing, different products to major miners as they look to fund operations. And so I think that kind of those networks that you partly that operating in Hong Kong you interact with a little bit more, maybe give us an interesting perspective as we start to consider how to do different things with the Bitcoin that we have, or with different Bitcoin kind of products and financing. And so I think that that'll be something to watch here over time. What do you think about it? Do you think that we see strategy do something with someone like JP Morgan before too long, or do you think they wait until a certain thing happens? What do you think?
Yeah, I guess the obvious thing is that they're going to be thoughtful about it. And something that I was actually just talking to someone earlier this morning about is like, I only want to preferably do things that you can't do, right? So we're all kind of complementing each other. So I think that, it just reminds me of Saylor saying, I'd rather make $3 billion than $30 billion, but just be able to sleep at night, not have that counterparty risk, and not do anything that's too far out the risk curve, and allow the rest of the ecosystem to develop. And try new things, do new things. Yeah. What's the regulatory environment in Hong Kong maybe versus the US? Is the US still kind of like everyone's looking to the US for making that first move? And even I think comments, unless it's an old clip of Trump saying like, oh, China's doing, may do things with Bitcoin and crypto. I mean, does that tell you there's a likelihood that we may see this more nation state adoption kind of FOMO or at least direction? I
think everyone looks at the US.
Yeah.
I think Hong Kong is also its own market that thinks very deliberately about how they navigate any sort of new, anything that's kind of a hot new thing in the public markets. Hong Kong is going to be very deliberate about how they allow it to be implemented there. I think that another kind of obvious example is how SPACs really took off in the US. Hong Kong was a little bit slower in how they managed to give sort of a similar product to investors there. And I think that probably it's a wise way to do it by the exchange, by regulators in Hong Kong. I think one thing that I really appreciate spending some time in Hong Kong as a public company is how careful regulators, how careful the exchange is in protecting minority shareholders. It's one of the reasons it's one of the most trusted public markets in the world. And I think they do a great job about it. They're open to feedback on different things. They are interested in companies that want to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They're Hong Kong in general is very forward thinking when it comes to bringing in businesses that will be leaders in the Bitcoin space and the Web3 space, they might say. And so I think it's only going to get more positive to be operating a business like ours in Hong Kong. I think it's something that will bring some dynamism to the market, outside investors in the market, which is something that everyone wants. So I'm bullish on Hong Kong moving forward, but it's definitely its own place. And I don't think I would characterize it as sort of following the US's lead on these things exactly.
Got it. Yeah. Super interesting answer, because everyone thinks that their bubble is like the entire bubble. And I think you really see it a lot in the US, where it's like, well, the US is doing this and the US said that. And you're like, well, there is the rest of the world somewhere.
The rest of the world's big. Yeah. The rest of the world's big. What's been the most interesting market that you've looked at outside the US? You have so many people come on from different markets. What's kind of piqued your interest?
I feel like we've covered so many US companies and very few outside. Certainly Metaplanet and had Jason here in the studio. So I think, if anything, there needs to be more coverage of what's going on outside the US. That kind of leads me to, how do you think about the global market? Is it kind of a race to launch in the top 25 markets or the top 50 markets? Or I know I've heard in conversation people saying like, if it's a top 25 market, that's kind of like the best, that's kind of the tier that they're looking at. Do you have any thoughts on the 512th capital market may not be, like one someone's going to jump on this year?
Yeah. I mean, every major bubble market is what we think. From the Moon side, we're mostly interested in Asia, because kind of that network in Asia is something that I think benefits Moon longer term. But we're interested in other markets. We've, I think, talked a little bit publicly about being interested in Vietnam, interested in Taiwan, interested in Indonesia. These are all markets that I think would benefit by having a company that's focused on a Bitcoin strategy there locally. And there are some really incredible entrepreneurs who've already built great things in Bitcoin from most of these places. One of the first real exits of a Bitcoin company was Bitcoin PH, almost a decade ago now. And, that team is still around building. And, I think that the market in the Philippines is interesting. Some great Bitcoin entrepreneurs in Vietnam, Bitcoin VN, Dominic Whale down there has been a long time Bitcoiner and really, I think, a leader globally in the industry. I think the Vietnamese market is dynamic and growing. One thing about Asia, Southeast Asia, is that it is such a dynamic market and growing, faster than, what we see in the West, what we see in Europe. And so I'm bullish on, those long term, and I'm happy that we can kind of have the proximity to be, maybe starting the first plays in some of these smaller markets in Southeast Asia as they start to boom. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think Moon's positioned well to be a leader globally, partly because of that proximity to the rest of Asia and Hong Kong's place as a global financial center, but kind of the connector for Asia for investors from around the world. So very bullish about that aspect of Moon's kind of ability moving forward.
Bullish.
It
sounds like the regulatory environment is kind of in the forefront, especially in the early days. What challenges outside of that have you seen on the service provider side? Is it like it's pretty obvious who the service providers are and you just kind of go through all those steps? And then also the media side of it, I kind of view it as it's like dual pronged, like capital markets play and a media play. So how do you think about the media side of it?
Yeah,
as well?
That's a good perspective for you to have, for sure. Service provider perspective, it's one of the nice things about being a public company is everyone kind of wants to work with you. So we have our pick of who to work with when it comes to different providers. I think there are great options in the industry now that have been tested and gotten to a point where they're a number of great options to partner with. And the different services that we need. all good on that front. And then on the media side, I think it is interesting. One of the things that I came from BTC Inc. and BTC Media, UTXO, before joining Moon. And we actually launched the Bitcoin conference in Asia about 18 months ago, as we were starting to look at the next market to enter after launching MetaPlanet in Japan. And so doing the conference, the Bitcoin conference in Hong Kong, Bitcoin Asia, as kind of our first Asia flagpole event, really also contributed to making us bullish on the market in Hong Kong. We interacted a lot with local government officials and the industry in Hong Kong leading up to that, and had a very successful first year event with just a lot of energy and a lot of interest from people all around the world to do more business in Asia through Hong Kong. And so that media angle was beneficial in us moving quickly on a play in Hong Kong. And I think that media angle is one of the kind of strengths of Moon moving forward. Also, we still have a fantastic relationship, obviously, with the BTC Inc. UTXO side, with them as a core investor, and we'll be a very public partner of the Bitcoin conference in Asia moving forward. And so, kind of being able to play a role in connecting the industry in Hong Kong, once a year through that conference, I think is pretty key. Bringing in people like Eric Trump to really put the spotlight on Hong Kong and the market there. I think that's something that we can do to not just add value for shareholders of Moon, but I think add value to Hong Kong as a center for Bitcoin innovation and adoption moving forward. So I think the media angle is pretty key. I think that kind of the local media is more niche in different parts of Asia, is maybe not as large of an audience, many different languages and things. And so developing that out as we kind of grow this network of treasury companies in Asia is something that we're thinking about and, partnering with the right people locally for. But I think that, if you're going to be running a company that's bullish on Bitcoin long-term, that media angle, that community angle is a key thing to focus on. Which is why I think what you've done is taken off so well over the last year. Is people want information, people want to hear from people moving the markets, and so I think you're kind of leading the way in the U.S. for that, and I think making a dent in how people view this model all over the world too. So you need to get over to Hong Kong and meet some of your fans in person.
Absolutely, yeah. I was actually speaking this morning. I think the viewership, which was surprising to me, is only about half in the U.S. So a lot over in Asia and other markets. So it is, especially if you're just so focused and see a lot about the U.S. a lot of the time, how global all of this is like.
Do you see that on Twitter?
Yeah, from the analytics that it's only about half kind of US based. So it's like, well, the other half's got to be somewhere else. Yeah. And sometimes the analytics are not as helpful. And you're just like, where are all of these people? Yeah. So we're going to figure it out.
You've been traveling a good bit this year. You've been to Europe already? You've been to...
Yeah.
Are you going to Amsterdam next week?
Yep. I'll be in Amsterdam. Cool. And Prague, Orlando, Vegas.
Yeah. Nice.
We're bouncing around.
Yeah. I think we first met in Orlando, I guess at Strategy's annual thing last year.
Yeah. And then, continue the conversation in Vegas. And
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. Where can people find you and Moon Inc. 1723 HK online or in real life?
Yeah. So we're in Hong Kong. If you're in town, stopping through, definitely come by. We love to host anyone at our office there. Show you a little bit of the city. You can find me on Twitter, Distriggs, and then Moon Inc. Moon Inc. HK is 1723's Twitter handle. But we're there. We are on Futu. If you're investing on Futu, we'll be on some different platforms. But happy to hear from anyone around the world, and happy to kind of spread the word about Hong Kong as a center for all this moving forward, and Moon as a kind of a hub for this as it expands across Asia. So that's our focus, and excited to be able to talk to such a global audience, to your point, about it here.
Awesome. John, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
This episode is brought to you by Arch Lending, the premier provider of crypto-backed loans designed for both individual and institutional investors. At Arch, your digital assets work for you without selling them. Arch offers flexible loan options tailored to your needs. Backed by industry leaders like Morgan Creek Digital, Castle Island Ventures, and Galaxy Ventures, Arch Lending is setting a new standard in crypto-backed lending. Are you ready to unlock the potential of your crypto assets? Visit archlending.com to learn more and configure your loan today. Are you looking for comprehensive analytics on corporate Bitcoin adoption? Strategy Tracker delivers real-time insights into how companies are executing their Bitcoin strategies completely free. Monitor NAV premiums, cost basis performance, and track how corporate Bitcoin treasuries perform against the market. Upgrade to Premium for just $3.99 a month and unlock exclusive benefits like detailed market rankings, real-time trading volume analysis, and advanced performance metrics for corporations embracing Bitcoin. Apply code KOTZ at checkout for 100% off your first month of Premium. Strategy Tracker is your essential tool for measuring the effectiveness of corporate Bitcoin strategies. Visit strategytracker.com and gain the analytical edge in understanding the Bitcoin Treasury phenomenon.